So welcome everybody to the Home Retrofit series. And this is sponsored by SMARTNet Alliance and the City of Ottawa. And for those of you, Alliance is a group of businesses and organizations that are working to collaborate on projects and initiatives to accelerate the transition to Canada's sustainable economy. So for more information on SMARTNet Alliance, visit our website, which I'll put into chat shortly. And be sure to check out our member pages if you are looking at doing any retrofits. It's a great place to start. We've got members working as energy advisors, home builders, renovators, battery technologies, solar providers, and a whole lot more. So make sure you go down and check out our member pages, and I'll put that into chat for everybody. Well, tonight we talk heat pumps as well as Better Homes Ottawa. So it's exciting that everybody's getting excited to go down these retrofit journeys. There's some new loan programs out. We know that there's the Greener Homes Grant from NRCan, a national program, and we have a new program here in Ottawa where you can get a zero interest loan to do a retrofit. So we certainly hope that a lot of people are starting to think about what they can do at their homes to make them more energy efficient. As we heard from COP26, time is running out, and we know that the time is now to make those changes, and we need to make those changes on the home front as well. We're seeing weather events across not only our own country, but across the world. And so now's the time to decrease our energy load and make our dwellings as efficiently as possible. So welcome everybody. Give yourself a pat on the back for joining and being interested in this topic. And we hope you can answer some of your questions tonight. So we're going to talk, first up, we're going to have Melanie Johnston from EnviroCenter to talk about the new Better Homes Ottawa website. After her, we'll have Matthew Eglin, who will talk about heat pumps in the home, what they can do. He recently installed a Mitsubishi Zuba, so we'll be taking through us that. After Matthew, we've got Daniel Vivian, one of our members and the founder of the Building Science Trust, and he'll be talking about heat pumps. He'll run us through a whole, what is a heat pump, and also talk about all the advantages of them. So thanks so much. We are recording tonight. We will put a link out onto our YouTube page within the next week so people can re-watch this. If you do have questions for the speakers as they come up through their presentations, please add them into chat, and I will go ahead and quarterback them over to the speakers once we're good to roll. So we'll get going with Better Homes Ottawa. I was very excited to see the launch of this website earlier this month. I've been highly anticipating it, as I know many of you have, and it's great to see it live now. And like I said, it's a great tool for those who are thinking about doing home energy retrofits in your own home. There's a ton of different stuff, and we've got Melanie Johnston from EnviroCenter to run us through that. So Melanie Johnston is the Energy Programs Director at EnviroCenter and has been with EnviroCenter since 2009. She's been instrumental in the development and delivery of EnviroCenter's energy efficiency programs. So well done, Mel. She has assisted with the development and implementation of training for over 40 energy advisors, and that's probably more now, right? We can probably update that. That's probably up to 60 now. 10 plus retrofit contractors. And in addition, Melanie has worked with multiple social housing providers to educate them on the values of retrofitting older building stock, as well as delivered numerous presentations. So thankfully, we have her here with us tonight to talk about the Better Homes Ottawa website. I'll put a link into chat shortly. Welcome, Mel. Thanks for joining us. And I know you're as excited as I am to have the site up and live.
Thank you, Nick. Thanks again for the opportunity to present. This is definitely something I'm extremely proud of, and literally we just started with a real friendly conversation at a training session I happened to be at in Toronto, hosted by the City of Toronto, and I said, this website is awesome. We should have something like this in Ottawa. And she said, take it, make it yours. Don't apply for funding. We already got funding to do it. And so with that, we purchased the domain name and started getting to work on taking information from the Better Homes Toronto website, really making it relevant for the folks here in Ottawa, and then enhancing the website, because even the folks in Toronto were like, ooh, we could really use some improvement. So we took a lot of feedback from folks who tried out the website, and ultimately the goal really for me as somebody who's worked in the field for 10 years was to make a place where folks could go to and have all of the information presented to them. So we can't take credit for all of the content because so many great folks are out there doing so much good work in this sort of industry. And the goal really is to highlight and share links for what folks are already doing and get it into one place. So when you start to want to learn about a heat pump, maybe you don't have to go to 7 different websites. You can go to one place and get some referrals and information there. So I did ask our comms team very last minute today to put together a little bit of a PowerPoint presentation after receiving feedback from my team that nobody wants to watch somebody else scroll through a website. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to share my PowerPoint presentation with you, which is really just a handful of screenshots. I actually already put the link in the chat. So if folks do want to, I mean, it'll be easily to get distracted if you happen to go to the website, you'll be so engaged by the content there. However, I have shared that link and you can feel free to poke around as we're going through. So I'm going to do my best to share my screen here. Bear with me. And Nick, if you, once I do share, if you can just give me a heads up that everybody can see what I'm sharing, would be really great. Okay, all good?
Yes, we see a beautiful diver. We see your yeah.
Awesome. So we'll just get.
We don't see your presentation yet, Mel. Just your desktop screen there.
Oh, that's embarrassing. One moment, please.
Well, no worries. It's making us all think about what vacation we want to book there for the winter once we install our heat pumps, of course.
Okay, so I apologize. You'd think after 2 years of doing this kind of thing that I would have had this down to an art. What is going on here? Try that one. How about that?
There we go. We're good to go. Thanks so much, Mel.
Yes, thank you, Nick. That's, I don't have any tech support on hand tonight. I've got you. So thank you very much. Awesome. So yeah, this is the new branding. This website is funded in part by the City of Ottawa, the Ottawa Climate Action Fund, and then again, some in-kind sponsorship and some work in this. We also are partnering with the Ottawa Energy Collective on this fantastic project. So about EnviroCenter, just as a reminder of who we are out there, we are a local environmental nonprofit organization that helps people, businesses, and communities take action on climate. We do that in a variety of different ways. Today, we're going to focus obviously on the built environment and residential side of things. So this would be your landing page for the website. This is what you'll see when you first arrive. And basically what we're suggesting at that is this is Ottawa's guide to creating a more comfortable and climate-friendly home. We really wanted to keep the tone of this to be super positive and super engaging, and as well, maybe steer away even from that word green, because everybody wants to make their house better. If it's because you're motivated from the environment or for comfort issues or for financial reasons, I don't think anybody can disagree and say, well, I'd like to make my house worse, please. So we kind of stuck with this terminology to keep as many people in Ottawa engaged. So within the homepage, you'll end up navigating to a series of buttons. And so here you'll see the first set would be around energy assessments, upgrades, and retrofits. So this is your guide to getting involved with an energy assessment, looking at opportunities for upgrades and retrofits, and really everything you need to know to get started on that energy retrofit journey. And you'll notice that it's the first button. And the reason for that is because typically any rebate, incentive, grant programs, or really any decision making should be made after you've had an energy audit done. We then get into a bit of conversation around a deep retrofit. So what does that mean? Why are we doing this? Keeping in mind, again, especially for those tech folks that are on this call, this is meant for your average homeowner in Ottawa that is just trying to get started on their journey. And then, of course, all important button, the rebates, incentives, and financing. So within that button, you're going to find tools for self-assessing. Where do I live? What kind of house do I live in? What are the rebates available? And so there's a bit of a comprehensive thing. And again, I'm more than happy to share my screen to go through the actual website if we've got specific questions around it. But I was told this is the best way to do it. And this is where you're going to find information about the Greener Homes program, as Nick was mentioning, the Better Homes Ottawa loan program, any other incentives or rebates that are available from your utilities, as well as access to some support for low-income folks and some free programs available from the utilities. Your next set of buttons are quite interesting. We've got the tools and resources. So here again, you're going to find a savings calculator. You're going to find access to information, for instance, on how to, choose a contractor. And keeping in mind that this website is a living website. It will continuously be updated with up-to-date information and additional resources as they're developed, or as we're, told that somebody's already got a really cool tool for estimating savings and those types of things. So, some of the stuff around the contractor engagement and vetting a contractor, this is all information directly from CHBA. They'd already done that work. We're linking essentially to those resources. And we do hope to expand the content quite a bit, maybe perhaps giving you some sample contracts that you might use with a contractor, a checklist of things that you might ask a contractor when you're vetting them, those types of things, really to be able to give the residents of Ottawa all the tools they need to navigate their journey. We've got a button here called Better Homes Ottawa Services. This is where you're going to learn more about the different services we offer, but you'll also get access to our energy coaches. So we have currently a dedicated 1-800 number where you can call in and actually speak with an energy coach. So you may have got your energy audit report and you've got questions. Well, you can reach out to a resource right here at EnviroCentre and they can help navigate you through that. We will also be hosting quite a few workshops and webinars and leveraging those energy coaches. So if we happen to notice that we're seeing the same kinds of questions coming up from residents, we can host a specialized energy coach session with a group of those folks. So if people were curious about heat pumps, for instance, we would have our energy coach be able to deliver a little bit more detailed information. And then the last button you'll see there is our Future Ottawa. Here you're going to have as it's written, a glimpse of the future we are working towards, a city that is resilient, low carbon, and thriving. And that's thanks to a green economy. Currently in that button, what you'll see is us highlighting our Future Homes pilot program. So that is a program that EnviroCentre is currently running with funding again from the Ottawa Climate Action Fund. And what we're looking at is providing energy audits to 2 specific neighborhoods with the goal of identifying some demonstration homes so that we can showcase in your own neighborhood what you can do in a house that might be similar to yours. And the goal really at this point for phase 1 is to test our marketing, outreach, and engagement tactics, identify these homes, do these energy audits, but at the same time, we hope to roll it into a much larger scale community neighborhood retrofit program. So, stay tuned. We may be coming to your neighborhood next. Okay, so if we get into the energy assessments, renovations, and upgrades, this is again just a screenshot of sort of the top. You've got your 5 steps to greening a home. So this is a really nifty little feature, and it gives you some high-level tips on how to green your home. We've got that getting your energy assessment, and there's lots of other content. We designed the website to be very scrollable, less clicking, more scrolling. And the reason behind that actually was for a few things: accessibility, and a lot of folks do this on their mobile phones or on their iPads, and it's not on a desktop. So we really wanted to make it something that you could access, when you're riding the bus to work and you want to read about energy assessments. We've got our contact us page. Again, we've got our hotline, so you can call us and have what we're calling a retrofit navigator help, give you some information on where to start. We've got our team of energy coaches that are ready to help advise. Our email address at betterhomes@envirocentre.ca, as well as our hotline number. And so that's a really great resource, I think. I think that in my experience, after having done this for 2 years, and actually as somebody who manages our pool of energy advisors, I still read that energy audit report and I'm like, ooh, I don't know where to start. And I work in this field, so I can just imagine how a homeowner might feel who's never seen something like this. And so we really felt very strongly that you needed to be able to contact somebody and actually talk to them. So your energy advisor is a great resource. This is maybe one step beyond. This is our energy calculator. So again, the idea behind this was to show some opportunities for saving. So this is a clickable button. You can click on your smart thermostat, click on your attic insulation, click on your energy efficient windows, and click on your LED bulbs. You'll notice I'm going to flip to the next slide. If you click on those two things here, we're only seeing about a 25% reduction in your energy use. The goal for this, again, this was our, get the website live. Let's make sure we've got some kind of a savings calculator. However, this is being enhanced currently, and we really do hope to be able to have all of the different things that you can do to get you to net zero. And so eventually you would go from sort of 100 to 0. And the other thing that we're working on is actually an infographic. So you could actually click on the different components of the home and be able to say, oh, okay, if I click on this button, this is really what a heat pump looks like. This is what it's going to save me in energy. And so this is an ever evolving tool, but something we're really excited about. And I think it's just one of those things that, if you can click on buttons, it tends to get you engaged and really interested in the tool itself. I think this is very close to my very last slide. This is what our menu looks like. So on the website in the top right hand corner, in most cases, folks always get this sort of little 3 dots. If you click on the 3 dots, you get the whole layout of the website. So again, the thinking here is that it's my first day. I want to learn about energy retrofits. I'm going to go to the home page and I'm going to click around and I'm going to find some information. I'm going to find it really engaging. Once I'm already engaged and I may be in the process and I really want to just find that page around the CMHC green home or around choosing a contractor, that's what I really want to know about. You can use this tool to navigate, so you don't have to go through sort of that front end and be, mesmerized by all our great graphics. You kind of have this actual directory that you can click on. So once you've become informed and you're kind of within your journey, you might start to use this tool a little bit more than maybe the main page. And of course, at the bottom, we've always got the opportunity for you to sign up for the Better Homes Ottawa newsletter. This is where we will be showcasing events like this particular event, any opportunities for education, outreach, any upcoming, as I say, workshops and webinars, as well as, really just information around potentially more pilot projects if we are rolling out, if we're looking at some bulk purchases for heat pumps and how you could get involved in that type of program. You're going to get that information on our website. And that's the end of my sort of formal slideshow. I will stop sharing now and turn it back over. Oh, good. I'm glad Darren's on the call. I guess he's answering some questions on my behalf here. I've got an EnviroCenter person. So Nick, do you want to go to questions?
Yeah, let's ask a few questions. I know there's quite a few in chat there, but let's kind of go through some of them. A couple of them will be sort of better a little bit later. City of Ottawa to talk about the Better Home Loans program a bit more. So maybe we'll sort of save some of the questions on the actual loan program till the end of the call there. But we do have, Gary's wondering, is there a site where I can find evaluations of heat pumps? Any recommendations for Gary on evaluations of different heat pump types? And some of the other speakers may have some other ideas there too.
Yeah, well, there's a few resources I can think of. I mean, Natural Resources Canada has some resources. I would probably defer to the heat pump specialists on the call. That being said, whoever for my team is on this call, write that down. Let's get that up on the website.
Yeah, I think the list that NRCam provides for their program is excellent. I went through it in some detail because I was struggling to find one that worked for an application. There were no bad ones on that list. It was all very, very good.
Okay, great. So that's fantastic. And we had another one. Someone's asking about new builds. So are there any programs or incentives for new homes? I know that most of this website sort of talks about existing homes. Anything coming down the pike for new homes as they are being built that you can think of there, Mel?
Yeah, so EnviroCenter's, kind of niche market, if you will, or where we've sort of carved a place for ourselves is in actually the retrofitting. That being said, yeah, there are incentives and rebates available for building your home to a higher standard. There's certain certifications that can go through, and certainly, labeling programs through, say, CHBA in a few different places. So I'd be happy to share resources, Nick, with you outside of this. Do I think it'll live on this website? There's an opportunity for sure. I mean, we always have the opportunity to expand those buttons, create more buttons as we get the requests for that. So we could look at it. But yeah, for right now, I would suggest, again, a lot of existing sites out there like Natural Resources Canada, the Canada Home Builders Association, that can give you some information on opportunities for saving money in a new build.
Fantastic. And Jacqueline's wondering, are energy coaches free, or is there a fee for that?
No, that's all free of charge. So again, through funding that we've received, both through the City of Ottawa, well, really mostly through the City of Ottawa as part of our loan, as a part of our role in administering the loan. Yes, they are free. We have some other options. If you really are looking at getting a retrofit planner, that would be maybe something you might pay a fee for with us. But at this time, yeah, just that general energy coach hotline is absolutely free of charge.
Awesome. Great service that you guys are providing. I know someone's wondering about the bulk purchases. I know Envari, we did have someone from Envari, but unfortunately they're not quite ready to come and present on that yet. I think for the bulk purchases, we're recommending that folks email Better Homes Ottawa at envirocenter.ca, right? And I'll share that into chat if they are interested in the bulk purchase price, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I did see a question here from Hélène around on the French version of EnviroCenter. So we received a grant for translation. We are not-for-profit organization, so we do look at grants for these types of opportunities. We did receive a grant this year to do full translation. The Better Homes Ottawa website has been translated. There is still some content that needs to be updated. It's a bit of a work in progress, and we're actually working with the city quite closely on the translation for those pages. And then on EnviroCenter site, I was pretty darn sure that the whole thing had been translated, but I don't often go to that website myself, maybe because I work there. So I can let you know about that.
Thanks, Mel. Yeah, that's great. The questions are coming in. Everybody, if you can just sort of keep your questions fairly short, it's a little bit easier for us to sort of roll through them. If it's a longer comment, no problems, but the shorter questions are a little bit easier. We have a couple people wondering about apartment buildings and multi-residential, multi-family buildings over 3 or 4 stories. Anything around those that the website sort of talks about, or something coming down the pipe?
Yeah, funnily enough, that's a button I identified for sure. And I as I get into the website a little bit more, we are testing it continuously, and we certainly know that we have to continuously check it. But in this particular case, yeah, we have resources for multi-residential buildings. Unfortunately, there aren't a ton of rebates or incentives for folks that are living in that multi-residential space. However, we do have resources around electric vehicles. Waste diversion for sure is a big one. Some DIY type of activities that you can access. And so I will check back with my comms team to see where that button landed and get it back up there, because we don't want to ignore the folks that are in condos or in multi-residential situations. Obviously on an energy efficiency side, if you're looking at like large scale window replacements and building envelope upgrades, that's a bigger conversation that we're having. But certainly we do have access to information that is relevant for folks that are living in those buildings.
Great. And there's a few folks that are sort of outside the Ottawa area, as we have a bit of a wide audience here. One person's wondering, are the energy coaches just for folks that are inside Ottawa? And then obviously, folks outside of Ottawa can still use the resources on the website, but they may not qualify for the loan program. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So want this resource available for anybody that wants to use it. We're members of Green Communities Canada, and I've actually brought this forward to Green Communities Canada. They're like, what should we be working on next? What kind of a, and I said, well, how about Better Homes Canada? Let's get it out there, and let's share this resource with any municipality that wants to make it their own and customize it. So again, this is quite open sourced, the information here. Folks can take it and use it. The energy coaches, I would suggest, yes, if you've had an energy audit and you're looking to answer questions, I don't see why. We deliver programs across the province, and so we're happy to answer questions. Really, the goal is, if you want to retrofit your house, we're here to help you. Let's just get them done, because we have a lot to do.
Absolutely. No, it's great work, and it's nice to see it rolling. I know there's quite a few technical questions in chat there. I want to thank our member Chris Habits from Good Habits for jumping on and answering some of the technical questions. I want to also remind folks that we have 2 more presentations from 2 technical speakers coming up. So you may want to hold off. We'll sort of hold off on answering other questions because, like I said, we've got those 2 other presentations where we're going to talk more about the technical aspect. I know folks are wondering about the amperage service, and I'm sure Matthew and Daniel will speak to that. So yeah, Mel, I want to thank you so much for your hard work. It's fantastic. I know we've been kind of working on this website together, and we've been chatting for about 6 months. What it's going to look like. So it's fabulous to have it out and in people's hands, and another tool to get folks to go down this retrofit journey. So congratulations to you and the whole team at Enviro Center, and we'll maybe get you to sort of stick on the call to, if you feel like getting into the chat questions. There's quite a bit there, but and we'll sort of circle back with Janice as well after the other 2 presentations for the loan program. So once again, thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. And thanks again for all your support, because yes, you've been a real leader. And I know I got lots of emails from you saying, hey, is the website ready yet? Hey, is the website ready yet? So we appreciate your support. Thank you.
Absolutely. Got to find out when it's live and get it out into people's hands. So that's great. So a lot of different questions in chat. Will someone go over what a heat pump is? How do I know what type of heat pumps I need for my home? Yes, we're going to answer all that. We're only a half hour in. We've got 90 minutes left. So everybody take a deep breath. Let's focus on our heat pumps. We've got 2 great speakers coming. We've got Janice from the City of Ottawa, who's going to talk about the loan program. So everybody, all your questions will definitely get answered. For the bulk program, it's not something that's live yet. So if you CA, they'll put you on a potential list. But other than that, we don't have anything else to announce. We'll sort of circle back on that for another one of our episodes here. But once again, thanks so much to Mel. Make sure you get over to the Better Homes Ottawa website, surf around, spend a couple hours on it. There's lots of different resources. There's a whole directory of potential upgrades that you can do. So can't recommend it enough. So once again, thanks so much. So now let's get over into our technical side and talk a little bit more about what heat pumps are and what you can expect if you're putting it in your home. And for that, we're going to bring up Matthew Eglin. And Matthew is a technology consultant and works to reduce emissions for clients with a focus on transportation and emission awareness. He is also a climate reality leader and is working to #stop burning stuff. Matthew has served on the board of the Electric Vehicle Council of Ottawa for the last 4 years and has recently moved to a 19th century house in Picton and is working to update the house and its systems. So welcome in, Matthew, for your presentation. You're going to talk a little bit more about what heat pumps are and what your experience was installing one.
Great, thanks very much. I'll just share my screen. Okay, can you see my slides?
Yeah, that's coming through great. Thanks so much, Matthew. Great.
So heat pumps, why they matter and why you should own one, or maybe more than one. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about what a heat pump is. Dan's going to cover this in more detail, but basically it's a device for moving heat from a cold source to a warm, from a cold place to a warm place. You've got one in your refrigerator, they're an air conditioner, they're very different things that do the same thing. Dan's going to go into the details. They're fantastic. The important thing you need to remember is it takes a lot less energy to move heat than it does to actually make that heat. Heat pumps come in all shapes and sizes. They exist in electric vehicles, as you probably realize. They exist in dryers, they exist in houses, and they exist as a heat source. And they also exist as a heat pump hot water heater. Now I'm going to talk about each of these. Not the EV one. You've heard enough. Most of you have heard me talk about EVs plenty over the years. So why are heat pumps important? Well, let's compare them to EVs. So EVs are important not just because they run on electricity, but because they're incredibly efficient. An EV allows us to take 1 unit of energy and go 4 or 5 times further. Well, heat pumps are very, very similar in concept. They take heat and multiply it. So we get 300% of the energy out of a heat pump than we put in, compared with 100% for electric baseboard heaters, or maybe 80 or 90% for a methane natural gas heater. Perhaps more importantly, they're important because they let us stop burning stuff. I don't know about the team that's working on this, but I'm still burning from COP26. And this is not a big enough focus, and we need to get on with this. So this is important. Let's talk about heat pumps for your home. Let's start with a simple one. Now, I don't think a lot of people know about these, so this is important. You can get a heat pump clothes dryer. And these are incredible devices. They basically use the warm side of a heat pump to dry your clothes, and they recycle the heat, and they drain the water out using condensation, and they don't require a vent, so you're not pushing heat out of the house. In this house, I have a Whirlpool heat pump dryer. This is a hybrid system, so it does have some waste heat. It's about 53% more efficient than a regular dryer. It does create a bit of bypass heat into the house, which is great in the winter. Not so good in the summer, but we have a patented solar wind clothes drying system, i.e. a clothesline, that we use in the summer, so it's not much of an issue for us. And this one only uses 14 amps. So if, because you have an EV and a heat pump heating your house, you have panel capacity issues, these can be a very useful solution. This is my favorite clothes dryer. This is the dryer we had in our house in Ottawa. This is an 84% reduction in energy usage, creates almost no waste heat, costs basically $10 a year to run. Amazing, and only needs 15 amps. So phenomenal solution. So if you're looking for a new dryer, please look at heat pumps. They are a bit more expensive. The Samsung was about $1,000. And at the time, there was a 25% Energy Star rebate available. So with tax, I paid just under 1,000, and the Whirlpool came out to be about 1,500, probably about 1,700 before the grant. The Samsung pays for itself in 1 to 3 years compared with an electric dryer, and the Whirlpool is close to about 10, but still very good. The Energy Star rebates from the feds were good until March 31st. Hopefully they will return. And I used FW Black and Rona to get these devices. This is my hot water heater in my house here. It's basically an air conditioning unit mounted on top of my hot water tank that takes heat from the basement and puts it into the hot water tank. It's phenomenal. This is as you can see, this is a stone basement, and it was quite damp, and we had to run a dehumidifier most of the time. With this unit in place, I no longer need my dehumidifier. And in fact, the basement is actually slightly drier than the rest of the house. It's been phenomenally good. The payback on this compared with our gas one is about 4 years. With an electric one, it'd be about 2 years. The cost was relatively low. It was about $3,000 total. If you go to YouTube, to Matt Reisinger's channel, you can find all sorts of different alternatives. The only downside I found with this particular unit is a bit noisy. It's not any noisier than a gas hot water tank, but it runs longer, so you do notice the noise a bit more. I ended up adding a bit of noise sound insulation to improve that. Here's the energy efficiency of that unit. This is the Ream system. The software is a bit iffy, but this is the output. It's pennies a day to run the hot water tank. So this is 50 kilowatts for a month in May, down to about 37 in July and September. Very, very efficient. This is our mini split system that's in this house. Again, this house is an old house with a 19th century extension, which somebody's put an extension on in the 80s, and they were heating it with a gas stove. We've put the system in to basically allow us to not use the gas heater. It's a phenomenal solution for what we needed. It's operated down to -20. I live in the county, so it hasn't gone any lower than -20 since I've owned it. And this was about a $9,000 system for 2 heads. Phenomenal system. And this is a friend's house just down the road. She lives just out of town, and she was running on propane. We installed for her a 3.5 ton system. It's a 2,000 square foot chalet style home with tall ceilings. The total cost was $20,000. She's going to get a return of about $5,000 from the Greener Homes program from NRCan. And this was a total furnace replacement. The house does have some supplemental heat. There's some baseboard heaters in a wood stove. So she didn't go with the resistance heating backup. She's got other backup sources. She's on propane, and her propane bill last year was $4,300. This year it would be actually a little bit more than $8,000 because the price of propane has more than doubled. Just a quick note on the process we went to with the 2 building installs that we did. The mini split system in my house was done by a local installer, and it wasn't subject to any grant requirements. It was just me working with a local guy to do things. That went really well, and they were experienced in doing what they were doing. The house system we did down the street was less smooth, and although the vendor had done 600 heat pumps in the last 18 months, the actual installers it's only the second Zuba system they've installed, and we had a few issues because they didn't understand the electrical requirements and how the wiring would be needed. They didn't have the right permits, and they didn't bring an electrician, and we're still working through those issues. A little bit inconvenient, but you need to understand that your vendor understands the needs for your house. So it's a very key thing in making sure that when you get your quote, that they've seen the house and then they understand the actual requirements. This is my last slide. I wanted to give you some feel for what the costs of heating your home with a heat pump are. And this graph came about because of the propane cost. So you can see here that currently propane heating is costing about 14 cents a kilowatt hour, which is incredible. It's actually cheaper off-peak to use electric baseboards than it is to use propane or oil. The electric heat pump is roughly the same price as natural gas. So the way I did this calculation, I've taken the actual cost of my natural gas furnace here, the actual price I pay amperage, and I've added on the cost of running the electrical side of the furnace, which is why there's a little bit of difference between the off-peak and peak times. And you can see that, yes, running your heat pump during the day when it's peak is considerably more expensive than gas, but at night it's considerably cheaper. And at mid-peak it's about the same. I use 300% because that's a reasonable coefficient of efficiency year-round. In the deepest midwinter with a cold, in the coldest days of the year, you're going to be down to about 200%, but on the shoulder seasons you could be up at 350 or 400. So this is a reasonable assumption for the total cost over the year. So it's really enlightening if you think that propane was down at about 7 cents per kilowatt hour a year ago. So it's quite a considerable difference. So the payback on that whole house system could be as short as 3 years if the propane stays as high as it is. It's phenomenal. Okay, that's it.
Thanks so much, Matt. Yeah, it's great to see that you've put those heat pumps in. A couple of people had a question about the dryer. Is it as fast, or does it take significantly longer than a regular dryer on the?
It takes a little bit longer, but it matches the cycle time of my front loaders in both cases. So it's pretty reasonable. If you had a baby with cloth diapers, you'd have to plan this out a bit, but it's not so bad. It's not a huge difference. My cycle time on my washing machine is an hour, and my cycle time on the dryer here is an hour and 20 minutes, but it usually does it faster than that. So there's about a 20-minute difference, maybe. The Samsung one was about the same.
Okay, thanks. Maybe leave that slide up because there's a few questions around that. We also had one around permitting. Why are permits required for heat pump installation? There's someone who's far down the road on that and they haven't run into that yet. So it's just
right, yes. Okay, so let's be clear that the installation at Kathy's house down the street has a ESA defect sheet against it. And the reason for that was twofold. First of all, people who install air conditioners and heat pumps are allowed to do the electrical work necessary to do that, but they have to pull a permit. Usually that's done behind the scenes and you wouldn't normally be aware of it. But I would recommend, having gone through what we went through, that you do actually ask about it. The issue that we faced, though, was that to get the heat pump into the system, Kathy's panels had to be reorganized. She has a generator, so we wanted the heat pump to be on the generator panel. There wasn't enough space, so we had to shift some load from the generator panel back to the main panel. That reorganization has to be done by an electrician. And that requires an ESA permit to do that. Now, the electrician would be responsible for pulling the permit. So again, the homeowner isn't necessarily aware of that unless ESA come and actually do an inspection, which is, for a heat pump, you would expect to see about 1 in 3 would get inspected by ESA, maybe a few less than that, but as it's such a big load, they tend to do that. We found that the installation that was done at Kathy's place, there were a number of deficiencies, including they used the wrong size wire. So those are in the process of being corrected. So you have to be a little bit careful about that. And this is an issue because installing an AC unit is essentially identical to doing a heat pump. You know, you're putting in cooling lines, you're putting in an outside unit, you're putting in an indoor unit, you're connecting it all up and you're connecting it to power. But the power draw on a heat pump is considerably higher, can be 2 or 3 times what an AC unit is, particularly for a whole house system. And that requires a little bit more care and attention for dealing with the electrical side. I'd recommend personally, the system here that was done in my house, the mini split, I had my electrician install the wiring to the demarcation disconnect, which is on the side of the house, and then the HVAC guys just worked on that side of it. It's probably a little bit more expensive for me to do that, but I knew that the permitting was correct and I knew what was going on was going to be fully legal. And despite the fact that my house was essentially rewired at that time, ESA didn't feel the need to come to my house to inspect. They gave me a pass. So it's a question there of just making sure that the people's ducks in a row and making sure they do the right work at the right time.
Oh yeah, that's a good consideration. Yeah. Thanks so much, Matthew. So a couple of people are wondering, from your graph there, it appears that the average cost of heat pumps is then equivalent to a gas furnace. And Chris is also wondering, can you explain what the 300% figure refers to? So kind of a double question there.
Yeah, so that's the efficiency. So typically, depending on temperature, a low temperature heat pump running at -13 Fahrenheit. Now you've got that number stuck in my head, Nick. I'd never remember that normally. -20 Celsius is going to have a coefficient of efficiency of about 1.5 to 2 or 150% or 200% at the bottom end. If you're using your heat pump at, say, 10 degrees outdoor temperature, a couple of weeks ago, say, your heat pump's probably running at 400 to 450% efficiency. So for every kilowatt hour you put in, you're getting 4.5 kilowatt hours heat out of it. So it's a sort of a graph with temperature. And 300% is sort of, for low temperature systems, it's a reasonable estimate for a year-round efficiency. If you wanted to look at the worst case, this would be 200%. So you'd be basically exactly half of what the baseboard heaters are. So you'd be up around 14 cents for off-peak. So but year-round 300% is a good number to use. So it's competitive with natural gas if you are clever with the way you run your thermostat and you try and get the heating done in the off-peak time and you coast during the peak times. And you can make it competitive with natural gas for cost. As carbon taxes get applied to natural gas, this natural gas prices are going to go up, as they have already this year. And if I'd done this a year ago, the natural gas would not have been competitive. It would have been much cheaper. But as carbon taxes get applied and the base price of natural gas rises as troubles in Europe increase, then obviously the heat pump is a regulated price, whereas the natural gas is a market price. We're going to get natural gas will slowly, just like propane has, become less and less competitive over time. And that's an essential part of the transition too. So I think we're right on that turning point where you're not going to get the money you put into a heat pump back, but you're not going to be spending more money to have it at this point, which is an important change.
So some folks are wondering about the Zuba system. Can that heat an Ottawa home alone, or do you need some sort of backup for the heat pump for those really cold January, February days?
I think if I was in, so the installation here, you got to bear in mind, I'm in the tropics of Eastern Ontario in Picton. We didn't think we needed a backup heat source in the furnace. There are some backup heat sources in the house. There's a wood stove and some baseboard heaters we can use to supplement the heat. But essentially it never goes below -20, and below -10 here is quite rare. Ottawa, you're about 4 degrees cooler. So I think if I was doing this in Ottawa, if I was doing a Zuba, I would install the backup heat source, which is typically a 17 kilowatt resistance heater. It does make some demands on your panel. You need for doing a Zuba, you need a 200 amp service panel anyway. But if you're doing the extra 17 kilowatts, you need to be careful about the loading on your panel overall. But yeah, for Ottawa, I would definitely put in the module. It's not very expensive. I think it's about $800, and the control system already supports it, so it's not a big deal. One interesting thing that has happened very recently is that Mitsubishi when you had a Zuba, you had to use a proprietary Mitsubishi thermostat system, and it was a bit clunky. But recently, in the last 6 months, they've released an interface that works with Nest and Ecobee, and that's the one we installed, and it's amazing. It's really good. It takes care of the defrost cycles and allows you to set the speed of the fan if you just run the fan on its own. It allows you to adjust that and make some other changes. So it's a little control panel in the basement, but then the actual thermostat is a Nest or an Ecobee, which means you can do all the clever stuff that it can do. And the Nest thermostat, the more expensive one, supports the multi-stage heating and does everything really nicely.
Some folks are wondering about the longevity of heat pumps. Is it about the same as a furnace, or a little bit longer?
I suspect it's a little bit longer because there's less to go wrong. It's more akin to an air conditioning unit. So I think I don't see any reason why you wouldn't get 20 years out of one. And the things that would go wrong are basically motors and bearings, and they're replaceable. You wouldn't be doing a rip and replace.
Great. So someone has the capacity to install a ground source heat pump. How does that compare to the air source? Is that a better way to go for the ground source heat pumps?
More expensive, but more efficient. So the nice thing about the air source heat pump is they have a coefficient efficiency, can't say the word, a coefficient of efficiency that's fairly stable throughout the year. So you could probably be at 3.5, maybe 350% year round, which means that even on the coldest day, you wouldn't need to rely on having a backup furnace or a backup electrical heat source. So they're great, but they are much more expensive, maybe 2 or 3 times the cost. But really, I think they're the gold standard for energy efficiency. You'll lose a lot less power during the year, and you'll be a lot more comfortable in the coldest days of the winter. So yeah, I think it's a good idea if you can do it, if you have the space. Expensive, more expensive to maintain, but definitely better.
No, definitely. Someone's wondering, how do they know what their panels are rated for as far as their amperage service? Is that something you need an electrician, or can you eyeball that?
No, you can. There's a pair of large breakers usually at the top of the panel, which will say either 100, 125, 200, or 300 on them, and you can tell. It's very obvious. So if you have a 200 amp breaker at the top of your panel, that's the main breaker for the house, then you're good to go.
Great. Someone's wondering, can you change over from the heating and cooling fairly quickly? I know there's those days where we can, in those weeks, we go from -20 to +20. So
yes,
what's the change over there like?
Okay, so I haven't tested this, but yeah, for the whole house system, it's straightforward. You just put your thermostat on to heat and cool. It takes care of it. The only thing that I haven't, so when I installed my mini split, that was a question, because where I'm sitting, there's a mini split that way upstairs, and there's a mini split that way. Okay, so one is above the other. So it's possible that the upstairs room would get hot before this room next to me warmed up. And so you might want to have heating in one and cooling in another. Sadly, the mini split doesn't let you do that. And I was warned against accidentally setting it that way because it causes a problem, apparently. So you have to be just a little bit careful with mini splits that you don't have one section heating and one section cooling. So but you can switch quickly between the two, just don't have, on a mini split, don't have one heating and one cooling. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, that's smart. So someone's wondering about the average monthly cost using backup resistance heaters for the Zuba. Obviously, it would depend on what type of winter we have, but do you have any kind of idea of what that might be for someone in the Ottawa area?
I think it will be negligible. I would advise whoever's asking that question to go look at the climate records for Ottawa and look at the lows across the year. And, you know, we always say, you know, I live in Ottawa, and I'm sure I did this numerous times. We always talk about, oh, it's -30, oh, it's -37, it's -40. And when we use those low temperatures, we always mean with the wind chill. Even in Ottawa, it rarely gets below -20. And the Zuba is totally fine. It's giving you very good capacity right the way down to -20 before it starts to really tail off. So that it's rare that you get those days. So you're going to be, I mean, literally in where I am here in Picton, there are literally no days in the year when that would happen, which is why we didn't install it. The last 3 years, there have been 3 nights when it dipped to -20 or I think the lowest was -23 in 3 years. One night was -23, and the Zuba would be fine at -23. It's the 1 or 2 nights you get in Ottawa where it's -27, -28, which does happen in Ottawa. It doesn't happen here. It's those nights when you're going to have to kick into the electric heating, and it is going to be expensive for those few days, but it is only a few days.
Yeah, let's hope it's only a couple for sure this year. So folks are wondering about maintenance. Does the heat pump need to be cleaned, maintained every year the way a gas furnace needs to be maintained?
No, not at all. I mean, you may want to vacuum it out once a year, but that's about it. You don't maintain your air conditioner. It's exactly the same system. So it's yeah, it's very low maintenance, very low touch.
That's great. A little bit like electric vehicles. Don't need
Exactly.
to get them into the garage as often.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And
so a lot of people are asking about this amperage change. Is it difficult to change from the 100 to the 200? I assume that's not something that folks want to be doing themselves. They want to have an electrician.
No. So getting 200 amp service installed, it all depends. So it can be anything from impossible. So the house I had in Ottawa, we couldn't do a 200 amp service change. It would have been perhaps $15,000 or $20,000 to do that. Upgrading this house where I am now from 100 amp to 200 amp was, I think the total cost, I'm trying to think what the total cost of that bill was. It was about $3,500. And that included a whole bunch of rewiring in the house, the wiring for my EV, the charger, the wiring for the for this heat pump. It was much more reasonable. I think it was about $3,500, and and I had to spend $300 getting a tree trim to get the service moved. Wasn't very much at all. And I obviously I had to do it because I couldn't charge my EV or do anything else on 100 amps in this house because it's a fairly big house. But it wasn't horrendous.
So folks are wondering, when you go up to the 200 amp, is that enough for all your appliances? If you had solar, heat pump, your level 3 EV charger, heat pump, dryer, electrical stove, is that enough power for everything?
Yeah, so naturally you're going to do all of that right? You're not going to get an electrical stove. You're going to get an induction top stove. So that's a lower draw. You're going to get a heat pump dryer, lower draw. You're going to get an EV, which is a high draw, and you're going to get you're going to go to you already have LED lighting, lowering the draw. So those things sort of balance out. There's a lot of energy improvements. LED lighting frees up about 15-20 amps in a house, which is pretty amazing. The same for a heat pump heat pump clothes dryer, and then you add back on when you put in the heat pump heating system and the heat pump and your EV charger. So, but for a whole house system, a 200 amp service is perfectly fine.
Someone else is wondering about air filters. I know that's something we're often out at Canadian Tire or Home Depot this time of year buying our different filters. Do you need the filters for heat pumps? Is that similar?
Yes, exactly the same. Yeah. In fact, Kathy's system uses the same 25 by 1 by 16 filter that she always used. Yeah, they actually reused that section of the ductwork and kept her filter housing the same. The Zuba by default comes with a 20 by 25, I think, or a 20 by 20. It's a little bit bigger, but yeah, just a standard normal slide-in filter, just like a furnace.
That's great. And regarding snow buildup on the outdoor unit, is that something that folks need to worry about?
No. Let me go back to that picture. I don't. Oh, mine's. You can't really see from this one, but this is sitting about 2.5 feet off the ground. And if we go back to mine, same thing. You see, it's on a stand. So no, there was no ice. I had last winter. I had some icicles on the vent. That was about it, and they never lasted very long. There was no buildup. Oops, sorry. Yeah, so it was no. As long as you're it's not like an air conditioner. They're not on the ground. They're lifted up enough. And maybe in Ottawa, this is an 18-inch stand, and maybe in Ottawa you need a 24. But yeah.
Someone's wondering about going up to a 300 amp service. Do you know if that would be about the same cost as what you were kind of quoting there?
No, because that becomes more difficult from the hydro side. You'd have to talk to the hydro company about that. It's doable. There are a few houses that have gone that way. But as I said, you'd have to be in a absolutely ginormous house with 2 EV chargers, and to get to 300 amps, it's a long way to go. So yeah, talk to your electrician, talk to your hydro company. I don't think many houses would need to go to 300 amps.
So someone's curious, you may not want to share it, but how much do you pay a year in your electrical bill? Someone's wondering.
Oh, give me 1 second. Oh, so actually we don't know for the whole house system.
Okay, yeah, you haven't.
But I can tell you what mine is. I've actually got that written down on a piece of paper in front of me if I can find that entry. I was working on that a couple of days ago.
And we're going to have Dan up for some questions.
So
talk a bit more about.
Yeah,
sorry,
about
man.
140 a month.
That's great.
So that's all my driving and about a third of my heating.
Yeah, and then you're not paying any natural gas, right?
Well, I am. I'm still paying about $100 a month of natural gas.
Okay.
Yeah.
But no trips to the gas station. That's pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
So what about folks who have radiators and don't have the duct system? Can they still install heat pumps?
Yes, absolutely. There's a company called Arctic Heat Pumps out of Winnipeg that does a hydronic system, and it's amazing. It's expensive. Basically, it uses the same technology as the Mitsubishi and the Fujitsu units. I think they get their parts from Fujitsu. But it basically puts the heat from the heat pump into a buffer tank and uses the buffer tank to heat the house. And in some ways, that's a better, it's about 50% higher cost, maybe 100% higher cost. So maybe around 30 to 40,000 for a full house solution. But it does hot water as well. And it's really clever in that you can control the temperature of the buffer tank, and you can heat it up to a higher temperature during the off-peak time, and then move the heat from the buffer tank into the house when you need it. So there's some really clever stuff there you can do with some nice control systems. So it's Arctic Heat Pumps out of Winnipeg.
Awesome. Yeah, no, thanks so much. And for folks who maybe want to use heat pumps with their existing gas furnace, is that something they can do? They can do a hybrid system, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So hybrid solutions are a really good solution where you can't go to 200 amps, and you can get a cold temperature, a cool temperature heat pump rather than a cold one, and use it for it gives you about a 50% reduction in your gas use, maybe about 60%. Rejan's got one of these systems in Elmer, I think, somewhere in Gatineau anyway. And he's had phenomenally good performance with it. It was a warm winter, the first winter he had it, and it reduced his gas use by about 80%. So yes, you can definitely do that. Hybrid solutions are very good where you can't get 200 amps, because you can just use the same load as an air conditioner.
That's great. Someone's just asking for the name of that hydronic heat pump that you mentioned.
Arctic. Oh, now I've forgotten. Arctic Heat Pumps. Is that what I said?
I think that's right.
Yeah, out of Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Somebody can Google that for me and put it in the
And
chat.
someone else is just wondering about the heat pump dryer. Maybe just a couple more words on that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I actually really like it. I actually like the one in this. I'm starting to like the one in this house a lot, because it has got waste heat, but it doesn't go to the outside. So I feel like I'm not wasting any money by running the dryer, because the waste heat comes into the house, offsets my gas use, and the clothes are still dry. It's phenomenal. I really like it. The only thing, it's got two filters. Actually, both the dryers have 2 filters, so there's twice as much filter cleaning to do. But other than that, they're phenomenal. Really like them.
Well, thanks so much, Matthew. Really appreciate it. You've really gone through quite a few questions. I know we didn't quite get to everybody's question into chat, but I think we hit on quite a few. I know Daniel is going to talk a little bit about the air conditioners. So for those folks who had those kind of questions about some of the air conditioner switchovers, we'll have Daniel's presentation. I want to thank so much, Matthew, for presenting, and also for leading by example, and installing these things in your own home, and then sort of spreading the knowledge out to our community as well. So once again, thanks so much. We'll hope that you could stick around for any follow-up questions. I know there's quite a few in chat. So, and for those folks who want to capture the chat, basically you just hit the 3 buttons beside the little smiley face there, and you can download the chat. Okay, save chat. So you may want to wait till the end, and I'll give everybody a bit of time to do that, and then you can save chat, because I know a few people were wanting to capture that. So once again, thanks so much, Matthew, for presenting, and we'll hope that you stick around, and you can answer some of those questions into chat as well, as I know it's pretty active. So next up, we have Daniel Vivian, who is a mechanical engineer with over 35 years of engineering experience, with the last 20 years focused on building science consulting. And he is the founder of the Building Science Trust, and we'll put a link into chat there, which is a business dedicated to helping home and building owners reduce their environmental impact by preparing plans to move off fossil fuels as efficiently as possible. So thanks so much for joining us, Daniel. Come on in for your presentation.
Thanks very much, Nick. I'll just get the presentation going and start. I'd noticed that there was barely a question that I couldn't answer, and I agreed with Matt on all of his answers. We do offer a service, pay for information service, on how to move your house to net zero off of fossil fuels. It is a $450 report. We do it by contracting an NRCan energy audit, and the NRCan energy audit has some information, it lacks information that we add. So the NRCan energy audit doesn't add, it tells what your energy usage is in gigajoules. We convert those to dollars. They say what the savings are in gigajoules. We convert those to dollars savings. We advise what the cost is to do a measure, what the payback is to do the measure, what the reduction in greenhouse gases are by measure, and finally when to do it. So that's kind of the difference. That's the additional value that you get for the $450 report. So I want to thank everybody for attending this, and I do hope that you'll be blessed by the presentation. About me, professional engineer with 35 years experience, 15 years manufacturing, 17 building science, a couple of years of mining experience, 4 years of mining experience. I'm the principal of the Building Science Trust. And here is on average what Canadians have for personal emissions. On average, Canadians do 18 tons a year. Transportation, a car, an average car doing 10,000 kilometers a year releases around 5 tons. That's a gasoline car. A house, 2,000 square foot in Ottawa, actually a little bit bigger than 5 tons, and much higher if using fuel oil and propane. That's 5 tons with, just over 5 tons with natural gas, much higher with fuel oil propane. On the average Canadian, we all are averaged in the tar sands productions. So it's 4.5 tons that each average Canadian is generating with the tar sands production. So if we move off, actually if the Americans move off of using tar sands, because it's mostly going to America, and they do that by using EVs, and they do that by using net zero heat pumps and solar panels, then we would drop that 5.5. And why is that important? That's what we're getting to with COP 26. We need to reduce the greenhouse gases. So food, 2.5 tons a year. It is significant. So what can you do? You can switch to an EV. You can move to Gatineau, where heating is electric, comes from hydro, so very low in greenhouse gases. You can move your Ontario house to electric and net zero. You can eat less carbon intensive food, meat, or move to chicken and eat more chicken. So today I'll talk about the building portion. So space heating typically in a house is about 65% of the load. Domestic hot water is about 15% of the load, and electric, the electricity just to run, you know, your computer, your lights, the fans, the AC unit, 20%. Here's the impact by heating with various fuels. So it is grams of CO2 per kilowatt hour of heat produced. So you can see that fuel oil is up around 360 grams, propane is in the order of 200, natural gas is in the order of 150, but electricity in Ontario is very clean on the greenhouse gas side. I will get to the nuclear side. Very clean on the greenhouse gas side. If you use a heat pump, even cleaner. And of course in Quebec, Quebec's is amazingly clean. So very little greenhouse gas production. And of course, if you use the solar panel for your heating, for your electric supply, then it's also like Quebec, it's zero. Okay, so over the life, 20-year life of a heating system for space heating, these are the figures. This matches Matthew's figures. Matthew's were aligned very closely to my figures that I come up with on an annual basis. This is just moving it to the 20-year life of a house. And you know, this is surprisingly large costs. In fuel oil, you're up around $90,000 over the 20 years. Propane, $80,000. And by the way, the red color, the lighter bottom colors are the utility costs. You have to include in the capital costs too. So capital costs in propane and natural gas and those things, it's not much, but it is significant when you're talking about solar and in combination with ground source heat pump. You have no utility costs at that time. You have only capital costs. So in order to get an equivalent dollar, you have capital costs. So you can see, you know, what heating is the cheapest. You're stuck out in the country. You can't use natural gas in the country. So you're stuck with fuel oil, propane, electric resistance, or heat pump. So ASHP is air source heat pump. GSHP is ground source heat pump. So you can see that, you know, overall costs, there's not much of a difference. There is a difference in the capital cost. So ground source heat pump is the, when you're comparing those two, the longer light blue bar on ground source heat pump is, you know, more significant than in air source heat pump. So your capital costs up front are higher, but your annual utility costs are lower. So that's the difference there. They come in very closely. Natural gas, which everybody in the city has, and you know, here's the reason why. It's much cheaper than fuel oil, propane, and electric resistance. So we don't use fuel oil, propane, electric resistance typically in the city. Ground source heat pump, I distinguish between initial ground source heat pump and second ground source heat pump. And what that is so the initial ground source heat pump, you have to put a well in, and wells are expensive. They'll run, you know, $15,000 to $25,000. Second ground source heat pump is 20 years down the line. You don't have to put a well in 20 years down the line. Those wells are polyethylene tubing that go 300 to 500 feet straight down in a vertical ground source heat pump well, or they can go in horizontally too if you've got the land for it. Polyethylene tubing will last 10,000 years underground. You don't need to replace it. So eventually it becomes the cheapest form. And by the way, there is a significant reason, a second reason to go with ground source heat pump. And that is, you know, the temperatures that Matthew's talking about, the -27 and occasionally below, means that we will revert. There's a cutoff temperature in heat pumps, air source heat pumps. It means we revert to 100% electric resistance below the cutoff temperatures of the heat pumps. And with a ground source heat pump, since the water source, your ground source, never drops below 0, as Matthew said, your COPs are always 3 or higher. You would need 1/3 of the electricity generation and distribution if we all moved off of natural gas and onto heat pumps. So that's a lot of change in the electrical system. It's a lot of extra generation. It's a lot of transmission. The government's onto that. They're not incentivizing it with policy yet, but I suspect in a few years they'll incentivize it with policy. I generally still am not recommending ground source heat pump at the moment, because it is generally very almost prohibitive for most people to install because of the initial high costs. Okay, this one shows what your greenhouse gases are in that same order, right? So you can see only that the fossil fuel greenhouse gases, so this is tons of greenhouse gas produced in a typical 2,000 square foot house for space heating over 20 years. So you can see that the heat pump options are minuscule in comparison to the fossil fuel options. This is what we're trying to get at with COP 26. We're trying to get people moved off of fossil fuel sources. Now it's different for different provinces. This works in Ontario and in Quebec. Provinces like Nova Scotia with high in coal, Alberta, Saskatchewan, it's not nearly as good, but they are also moving off of fossil fuels in their electric generation. So here's a typical example of what you do in order to get off of fossil fuels. You typically move your electricity to net metered solar power. You add insulation to poorly insulated spaces. You seal drafty houses. You move the space heating to a heat pump, and you move the domestic hot water to a heat pump. Sometimes you might move it to drain water, heat pump, electric heater, and net metered solar. So this is typical of the type of work that we do. We estimate what the costs are to move a house to net zero, so using heat pumps. And I want to point out, this is a great example of showing, you know, the typical light energy conservation measures, air sealing, insulation, don't make a huge impact in your reducing your utility costs, or you'll also see reducing your greenhouse gases. Solar panels make a significant dent in your electricity costs, and heat pumps make significant dents, especially heat pumps combined with solar, make huge dents in your utility costs. Now, here's that same house doing those same measures and what the reduction in greenhouse gases are. So switching electric to solar, because in Ontario our electricity is very low in carbon, there's not much benefit in going to a solar. But again, there is a benefit economic on doing that. Small benefits in the air sealing, insulating, and more significant benefit on the greenhouse gases in moving off of fossil fuel for your domestic hot water, and very significant in moving your space heating to heat pumps, and especially with that combination of solar panels. How do they work? All right, so this is how a heat pump works. Pretend that this can is outside, and outside it is -7 degrees Celsius, and it's just at atmospheric pressure. Pretend that I can put a perfectly sealing puck inside that can, and I've got a refrigerant in there, and I'm going to squeeze that puck down to 1/7 of the size. When I squeeze that puck down to 1/7 of the size, the squeezed gas at the bottom under that red line, its temperature will increase to 49 degrees Celsius from that -7, and its pressure will go 7 times. I'm going to take now that hot can, I'm going to bring that hot can inside my house and allow that heat to escape out of the hot can and into my house. And then I'm going to bring that regular temperature, 20 degrees C can, with the refrigerant in outside again. I'll let that expand again. I'll let that puck rise up to the top again, where it will drop to much lower temperatures than -7 degrees Celsius. And heat from the outside will go into the can because it's going to be at, say, -40 degrees Celsius, right? So -40 is much colder than -7. And that's how heat enters into the can. And of course, if we did that cycle continuously, we would have a heat pump, not a very good heat pump, because we'd be running the pucks and cans in and out. Of course, so what we do is we use a compressor to do that, and refrigerant lines. So this is what it looks like with a compressor and refrigerant lines. So I'm going to start at 3. At 3, that's my coil outside. It is -7 degrees. We're going to go to 4. 4 is my compressor. My compressor is going to squeeze that to 7 times. It's going to go to a coil on the inside of the house, which is going to be raised to 49 degrees Celsius. Of course, on the inside, we're just under 20. We've got a fan behind that coil. The fan is going to push the cooler 20 degrees Celsius air over the coil and blow warm air into the house. It's going to go back up to number 2. Number 2 is an expansion valve where the refrigerant expands back up again, and its temperature will drop significantly lower, -40-ish, and we continue the cycle on over and over. Summertime operation, it's we switched the outside and inside. So down on the bottom, inside, outside for winter operation, outside, inside for summer operation. And of course, we call this an air conditioning unit, right? So in the summertime, you can combine these two things together using a reversing valve. So the top cylinder is a compressor. This box under the cylinder, just a little left to the outdoor coil, that's a reversing valve. So it changes the direction of refrigerant flow between summer and winter. And then along the bottom, we have 2 additional check valves and 1 additional metering device. So the difference between an AC unit and a heat pump is a reversing valve, 2 check valves, an indoor metering device, and controls. Now, unfortunately for those few parts, they do charge extra for those. It's generally in the order of about $2,000 extra to buy a heat pump over an AC unit. Here are just kind of examples of central AC. So the photo on the right, that's the outdoor condenser. That's what you typically see, you know, for central forced air, summertime air conditioning unit, right? The way that it works, you can look on the left side, there's a schematic of the condenser outside, which has a compressor in it, has coils and a fan. It runs the refrigerant into a coil in the furnace, typically in a central air, and the existing fan in the furnace blows the air through that coil. In the wintertime, that coil is a heat pump. It heats the air. And in the summertime, that same coil is an air conditioning coil and cools the air. As Matt says, you switch between operations summer to winter. Here's a different variation of that. So before, that's a central heat pump, forced air heat pump, forced air central system heat pump. This is a split heat pump. So with the split heat pump, what you do is you have an outdoor unit, you know, typically in air conditioning, that's the condenser. You run the refrigerant lines along the house and into the interior of the house, or sorry, you run it along the outside of the house, but bring the refrigerant lines into the interior. And we see this indoor head just above the doorway. And we run the refrigerant to that. That unit has a fan in it, and the refrigerant coil is in there. And so depending on the season, we're running hot air out of that or cool air out of that. This one's showing one single head, but you can have multiple heads. So if you don't have ducting in your house, but you want to go to a heat pump, this is the arrangement that you would do. You would put multiple heads, say one in the basement, one in kitchen, living room, dining room. I'm thinking especially of townhouses, electrically heated townhouses, and one upstairs in the corridor, the upstairs corridor. And that would cover off your heating, the vast majority of your heating and cooling needs. There are different ways to get your source of heat. You can put your source in a pond, and then we call that a water source heat pump. That, by the way, is really efficient to do because it's just coiled polyethylene piping in the bottom of the pond. You don't have to excavate to do it. You need a pond or a lake big enough. But oh, that's simple to do, inexpensive. If you're in a cottage or vacation property, you would likely consider with a lake or water source. You would consider that one. The next one down below is the horizontal ground source heat pump. So with a horizontal ground source heat pump, they dig trenches and then put the coils in the trenches, and which are 6 to 8 feet underground. They coil the polyethylene tubing at the bottom of the trench and then backfill over that. And the size is a little bit larger than the weeping fields for your septic system. Alternatively, If you're hard pressed for space and you want a ground source heat pump, you go down vertically. And those wells are 300 to 500 feet for a typical 2,000 square foot house. The ground looped collector is also a horizontal collector, just a little slightly different configuration than the ground horizontal collector. There are grants available right now. NRCan will give you $600 to do an energy audit for your house. People like Enviro Center can offer the energy audit, and wow, I missed that opportunity, but Mel, Enviro Center's work on the website is fantastic. It's really impressive. I want to congratulate all involved in that. So yeah, Enviro Center offers it. There's other service organizations in Ottawa. HomeSol is another local energy auditor in Ottawa. I have used Green Savers before, Enviro Center, HomeSol, all local. Green Savers not so local, but their advisor is local. The grant is $5,000 if you prefer to install a ground source heat pump. It is $3,000 if you're just replacing the ground source heat pump. It's $5,000 for a cold climate air source heat pump, or $4,000 for a split air source heat pump. You have to be a little bit careful, special rules in Quebec and Nova Scotia. There's a variation on the air source heat, the $4,000 option of the air source heat pump. I have to look at your situation to tell you whether you get the 5 or 4, and $2,500 for a split heat pump with 2 heads in it. So $1,000 grant for a heat pump water heater. So that's what Matt was showing for his domestic hot water. These are great deals. They come from the Greener Homes grants, and you'll want to combine these opportunities with what Janice is going to talk about with the Better Homes Loan program. When are you going to do a heat pump? You want to do a heat pump at 3/4 of the expected useful life of the appliance that you're trying to replace. And so let's say it's a furnace. Typical furnace will last about 20 years. You want to do it at 15, because if you wait until 20, it's going to break down in February, and you're going to call your HVAC contractor and you're going to say, I need my furnace replaced ASAP. He's going to say, well, I got a natural gas furnace in the warehouse for you. That's all I got. And you're going to say, oh, all right, put it in, and you'll miss the opportunity to put a heat pump in. So don't do that. Get about the majority of the life of your furnace out, and then replace it after about 15 years. Now, with these grants that are coming out, we may even like to back that up further, right? You may even like to do that earlier than 15 years to take advantage of the grants. I look at that specifically. I estimate the remaining cost that you would be throwing away when I do a study, and advise that on your particular house. AC unit, heat pumps to replace central air AC units, they have about the same life, 20 years. You want to do that after 15. And heat pumps to replace domestic hot water heaters. The domestic hot water heater will have about a 12-year life. You'll want to do a domestic hot water heater after it's about 9 years old. So, are there questions?
I hope that's a joke. Are there questions? Yeah, it's nothing but questions. There's quite a few. Thankfully, we've got Chris Habits on our side. And thanks again to Chris for such amazing work in the chat there. And I want to let everybody know that we did share Chris's website as well as yours, Daniel, so everybody can find you at the Building Science Trust. So let me kind of go through some of these. It may be a silly question, but can we not convert existing AC heat pump to standard heat pump just by putting a reversible valve and any other change applicable, and potentially save a lot of money doing it?
Yes, I thought we could too. So I actually did look at that with one of my clients. The heat pump itself, it's a 3-ton heat pump. We looked at a 3-ton heat pump. It's about a $5,000 heat pump, and it cost us about $4,000 if we were to offer the service. You would lose the warranty. For $1,000, we decided we didn't want to take the risk on it, and most of that cost was involved in the labor that of the switch, the reversing valve, 2 check valves. We actually had to take the heat pump off site, remove the gas, the refrigerant, install these components, install a new control system, bring it back onto site. That was a $4,000 exercise. So unfortunately, I don't recommend doing it. After we figured out how much it cost, we found literature that said the same. So, yep.
Yeah, I think the other thing is, Dan, that the technology in the modern heat pumps is actually dramatically different from existing air conditioners, in that they've got variable stroke, essentially.
Yeah.
It's not done that way. Compressors, and they've got very efficient electric motors, the same style of electric motors as are in EVs, to make them work at really low temperatures. And I think that's the magic sauce. That's why it's not the difference between a Zuba and the basic train is those components.
Yeah. I'm glad that you raised that point, because I did see that question before. Somebody had been asking, can you advise what the question is what's the seasonal COP of a air source heat pump? And yes, we can. So we do.
The graphs are there, right?
So we do that. We look at. I can offer that service. I can look at 4 different heat pumps at a time. It takes me time to do it. I offer that service at $250 to do that. So if you want to line up 4 different heat pumps, I can tell you what the advantage is. It is surprising that there isn't a huge difference between a cold climate heat pump and a regular heat pump.
Yeah, I think the quotes we got for Kathy's house were remarkably close, and it was a bit of a slam dunk when we got the whole house solution for essentially the same amount as we were looking at for the grant. The grant made it a wash. So
yep.
Yeah, and I think those costs are going to come down. One of the things the program is doing is it's promoting a far bigger market for the because they specifically targeted low temperature units. There's much more demand for those units, and more people are getting into that business, and people are being more competitive about their bids. So I think that's all going to help. There's no reason it should be much more expensive than an AC unit. It's not that much more complicated. The motors are, maybe there's a couple of $100s in the 2 motors. That's all it is. It's just quantity and scale.
So somebody's wondering about City of Ottawa restrictions on installing a ground source heat pump or drilling vertically. Any restrictions that either of you know of for the City of Ottawa?
I'm not aware of it. I don't know. I'm not that experienced with the ground source heat pump to absolutely say for sure.
Okay. Now, when you mentioned using a body of water, folks got pretty excited into chat here. folks were coming up with a lot of different solutions, those who live on the rivers and all that. So how deep, people are wondering, how big of a pond is needed? Like, would an 80,000 liter pool work? Does it need a special permit if you're in a river? Talk a little bit more about that, because that was a hot topic in chat.
Yeah, I bet. So yeah, you can't do it in too small of a pond. You'd freeze the pond, essentially. So, you know, typically you can do it where there's moving water, right? So streams are okay. I mean, this is okay as long as, you know, the Ministry of Environment will allow that. Now, I do know that there are companies that offer this. You know, there's heat pump companies around the Perth area that offer it. I don't know what the Lake Association would say about cooling their lake in the wintertime. They might say, hey, it's great, we get a longer skating season. So, you know, there's some detail in there that needs to be investigated. And like I say, pond size matters. And so you can't do it on a swimming pool. That much I can tell you for sure. It won't be big enough. The swimming pool won't be big enough. They typically freeze near to the bottom, just without taking the heat out during the winter time.
Great. So someone else is wondering, would a ground source heat pump loop installed under the slab of a basement parking garage work?
Yes, but be very, very careful not to freeze the foundation. That would cause heaving, and heaving under a parking garage would be a terrible thing to do. So be very careful about that one. I have seen there's a new product of a firm out of near Washington and in Europe, where they put the heat collection plates against parking garage walls. And that looks pretty promising, but again, you got to make sure that you're not going to freeze the ground.
So someone else is wondering, if you have a heat pump that is 20 years old, should it be replaced now? Are there any grants to go from the old heat pumps to the new heat pumps?
Yes, 20-year-old heat, yes. So there was on the ground source heat pump. Matt, is there a restriction on
I don't know.
I don't know that there's a restriction on upgrading to.
No, I don't think there is.
Yeah,
I think I would have noticed that.
I haven't come across that, and that's a great question. I will investigate that question with NRCan.
Yeah, great. We'll save the chat here too and get that out to folks. Someone's furnace is 20 years old. Is it too late to add an air source heat pumps to supplement it? Should they just scrap and get rid of the furnace altogether? Some thoughts on that?
Yes, they should scrap and get rid of the furnace altogether and put in a heat pump and get the $5,000 grant. But I also want to point out, I don't believe switching from natural gas to a heat pump is going to save you money on the utility until you start adding solar power in general, right? So if you're really looking for a savings on the utility side, then I'm suggesting that you need to add solar at the same time. I do those exact analysis with the studies that I do, and it's a great opportunity right now. The Better Homes Loan Program will loan you up to 10% of the value of your house. Typically, moving to air source heat pump and solar panels, and in fact doing the other insulation jobs that you would do, all lie within that 10% of the value of your house. So it's a great time to do that. You get $5,000 off from the Greener Homes grants. I would totally suggest to do that.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Dan. I also wanted to mention that the City of Ottawa, Hydro Ottawa, have just eliminated their net metering fee, something we've been lobbying for at SmartNet Alliance for quite a bit now. And last week we did a whole session on solar during our virtual green drinks, which we'll be putting on our YouTube channel later this week. So folks can head over to our YouTube channel. I just shared it into chat, sorry, and they can subscribe to get our content. We'll be adding this session and our solar session that we did last week. So that's great. Let's see, we've got a few more questions here. Someone else is wondering, can you install a ground source heat pump loop beneath a deck? What depth and area needed for 2,000 square foot home, roughly?
No. You would have to remove the deck, and that would be an added expense. So you would typically have a large enough expanse in your backyard to put the ground source heat pumps in. Many lots in Ottawa, that's problematic. You know, you've got to get backhoe equipment back into the backyard. Typically, the backyards are not large enough. Usually with the horizontal ground source heat pumps, those are good for country properties. The horizontal wells, the vertical wells are the ones that go into the city. Now, it's not used very often in the city, right? Because you're competing against natural gas in the first place. It is difficult to get the drilling equipment in for vertical ground source heat pump. But it's not impossible. And you can do it in your front yard too. It'll make a mess out of your front yard, but you know, if you don't have access to the backyard, you can put the vertical wells in. We do the studies on, if requested, we'll do a study on both air source and ground source and let you know what the costs are, between cost differences are, what the savings differences are, what the payback differences are. So
great. Someone's just asking what the net metering fee is. It was a fee that you had to pay if you had solar that was giving back to the grid. So you no longer have to pay that, thanks to the City of Ottawa, Energy Evolution, SmartNet Alliance, and a whole lot of other folks who were fighting for that battle for renewable energy. So that's great. Nice to see that. A few more questions here. We've got quite a few questions about the Greener Homes grant, but I don't have anyone from NRCan on the call. So I'm not sure that we can really link. I'll share it once you get into chat. I'm sure, but we're not really focusing on that as much tonight. So we may skip over those questions.
So Nick, can I make a general comment about that?
Sure.
The average time for a federal minority government to last is approximately 18 months. So notwithstanding Dan's advice about getting the most out of your existing furnace, those grants may disappear fairly quickly. So it's a, I would say, pay attention to the political circumstances that we're in, and if you can get those grants, get them quickly.
Great. No, that's smart. Dan, someone's wondering about, is there a way to store heat from the heat pump during off-peak hours to release it during peak hours to save money?
Yes. I'm not sure if it's economical. It can go into so when you install a space heat pump with a domestic hot water heat pump, you're getting that storage, right? So the space heat pump is heating the space, and typically it's going to happen right after your showers in the morning. So it's during the day, you're getting solar, the temperature is higher, energy is coming into the house. The domestic hot water is going to pull that energy out and put it into the domestic hot water tank. You could also do that. You could store energy in the domestic hot water tank and then draw in a separate one, and you could draw off of that in the evening, but it's extra equipment, and I'm not sure if the economics support that. There's products out of Europe that do that. They do that with water and phase change materials. So yeah, for additional fees, I could figure that out.
So Dan, that's Arctic Heat Pump's bag out of Winnipeg. So they have a hydronic system with a buffer tank. It takes up a lot more space and it's quite expensive. So it's air source heat pump to a buffer tank, and then buffer tank to either radiators or a hydronic loop in the furnace.
Yeah. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I did want to touch on that point also. If you're heating with hydronics, then you've missed the opportunity for air conditioning. You cannot air condition with hydronics.
Yeah.
So, you know, on the Arctic Air system, and one of my clients actually has this issue. They've got an older house in the glebe that has hot water radiators in there right now, no ducting through there. So her options are putting in split heat pumps, or like the Arctic Air, and then not doing the air conditioning. And it looks like not doing the air conditioning was not going to be an option for this particular house.
Yeah, it's a difficult one to get right. I think Arctic has some weird system for doing almost like a mini split air conditioning system, but it involves having a second buffer tank to run at low temperatures, right, with glycol in it. So it's not, you end up with a basement full of tanks. So it's not pretty, and it's very expensive.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. I know we have a few more questions in chat. Maybe we'll circle back. I want to take a little bit of time to talk about the Better Home Loans program, which is sort of launching in correspondence to the Better Homes Ottawa website. So if you're wondering, you're thinking, you're getting excited about all these renewable technologies, and you say, okay, I'm ready to do this. How do I pay for it? Well, the City of Ottawa has come up with a new PACE program, which is a new loan program, which basically the loan would be put on your home instead of your personal. And Janice Ashworth is here to talk a little bit more about that. I know we don't have a huge amount of time, but she's going to jump in just to say a few words about the program. They are now accepting applications at the link that I'm sharing into chat. And it's an exciting thing because the first cohort of folks who get into this program are going to be zero interest loan for the next 20 years. So you can borrow this money from the City of Ottawa. It'll go on to your property, and you can make all these amazing upgrades up to 10% value of your home. So let's bring in Janice to talk a little bit more about that. Janice, your screen's shared and your chat just popped up. So just a heads up on that. Thanks for joining us, Janice.
Oh, the chat just popped up. Sorry about that. Okay, you can hear me okay? You can see my screen?
I can, but your chat there is sort of covering up your...
I'm going to move that out of the way.
Yeah.
I was just doing that so I could grab the link that, oh, and now you can probably see that. Go here.
And I know we have a bit of a survey that we're sending around as well. So folks, check out the chat there for that survey that's coming in too. We'd love everybody.
Yeah, I'll just send around the link. I was just trying to get the link. Oh boy. Okay. I'll just close this all down. Okay. Thank you everyone for your presentation so far. I just wanted to quickly chime in on that last conversation about storage tanks and storing for off peak. I think there's an interesting technology too that actually stores the electricity using a battery system that's tied into a heat pump, and so it's reducing your exposure to electricity during peak hours through an integrated battery. I don't have the link offhand, but I was just informed of that a couple of days ago. I just heard about the technology. Okay, but jumping into the Better Homes Ottawa loan program, I've just shared a link in the chat with a bit of a survey that we hope will feed into some of our design for the program and just general feedback on heat pumps and what you're planning to do. There's a link there where you can sign up for information about City of Ottawa climate change initiatives. But you're here to learn about the Homes Loan Program, so I will talk about that. This is part of the City of Ottawa's initiatives to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions, both within the municipal buildings, but more importantly, within the community as a whole. Council set a target just last year to reach net zero by 2050, but also in line with the science-based targets. So ultimately that means almost net zero by 2040. And existing buildings are a big chunk of how we're going to get there. So that's the green wedge that you're seeing on this screen. That's all the emissions reductions that we expect to see from existing buildings. And we have to do a lot of work in order to get there. So the Better Homes Loan Program is one aspect of that, of those initiatives. As you all probably know, emissions from our homes are predominantly from heating our space heating, so mostly from natural gas that we use for heating our homes and also providing hot water. So you can see on the left, the blue bar is natural gas used in Ottawa for residential space, residential consumption. So that's where most of the emissions are coming from. On the right, you can see it's about 1/3 hot water, 2/3 space heating is where those emissions are going to, or where that energy consumption is going to. So heat pumps are a big part of the solution for our emissions from our homes. Not to suggest that heat pumps are the only thing, however, because our modeling shows that in order to both meet our emissions reductions and stay within the capacity of the electricity grid, incurring some increases, of course, but we have to also reduce the thermal demand of our buildings by about 70%. So that's a massive amount of insulation and air sealing that we're doing to our buildings at the same time as we're fuel switching them in order to meet our greenhouse gas emissions reductions and our renewable electricity generation capacity, because we also have to scrub all of the gas out of our electricity grid, of course, in order to meet these new demands. So by 2030, we're looking at 90,000 retrofits of residential buildings at that deep energy rate. And by 2040, we'd like to see that get up to over 300,000 retrofits of residential dwellings in order to meet these targets in Ottawa. That's going to include about 500,000 heat pumps in both apartments and single family homes in order to, again, meet those targets. And about 20% of roofs will have solar PV according to our modeling, which is about 320 megawatts on residential rooftops. So how can you be part of that program or that initiative? So the Better Homes Ottawa loan program is designed to make it easy for homeowners to take advantage or to do those deep energy retrofits. Right now, we have funds that are expected to last about 2 to 3 years, depending on uptake. I expect to extend it after that, but it will depend on a review of how the program went and the cost to run the program. It is eligible to all residential buildings that are under the Part 9 of the building code. So that's essentially 3 stories or less. It can be townhouses, MURBs, multi-unit, like triplexes, that kind of thing, but as long as they're under Part 9 of the building code. There is no upfront cost to the homeowner, and the repayment obligations that are for 20 years stay with the property through the point of sale. So they can be transferred to the new property owner by way of a lien on the property. So that's the same as any other lien on the property would be borne by the new owners. Okay, EnerGuide audits are required and energy coaches will be provided the way that Mel described. So here's the specifics. So the maximum financing that can be available to a homeowner is 10% of their property value, according to MPAC. So that's your property tax assessment value, or up to a maximum of 125,000. The minimum loan amount is 15,000. The interest rate that we're currently offering is 0%. And so if you get into this first batch of loans, you're locked in for that 0% financing for the full 20-year term. We're offering 20-year terms. We have about $8 million that we can offer as loans at 0% rate. After we go through the 8 million, we're going to be having to increase the rate to something, it'll be still low, but it will be something in the 3 to 4% range, I expect. We do charge an admin fee to cover application fees. So that's about 4% of the capital, but it's tied into the loan. So it's paid off over the 20-year term as well at 0% interest. There is an early payment option with no penalty, which is a lump sum payment option. So you can't do early repayments like faster payments, but you can pay off the balance of the loan at any point with no penalty associated. So often we would expect to see that at perhaps the sale of a home. If the new owner wanted to clear the liens, that could be an option, or at any point. It is required to do an EnerGuide audit pre and post of the work. So similar to the Greener Homes federal program, it's the same process. You can do this. You can use the same audit. We expect people would. We do a credit rating check based on your property tax and water bill payment history. If you haven't lived in Ottawa for 5 years and we can't see 5 years of payment history, then we ask you to submit a credit check from your bank. We don't pre-qualify contractors, but we will be profiling contractors who've received net zero certifications on the Better Homes Ottawa website that Mel showed us. And the funding sources that we're tapping into to deliver this program are from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and from Van City Credit Union. So what can you apply for? The measures that are eligible are pretty much anything to do with energy efficiency or climate change resilience as well. So insulation, anything to do with improving your building envelope, insulation and air sealing of all types, as well as windows, skylights, doors, that kind of thing. Mechanical systems, so heat pumps, of course, are eligible, as are hot water tanks. Renewable energy systems are also eligible, so solar PV, electric vehicle chargers, batteries that might be associated, load management equipment. Water efficiency stuff is also eligible, so low flow toilets and shower heads, rainwater harvesting, that kind of thing. Health and safety measures that are associated, those are eligible, so maybe there's asbestos remediation that's associated with your energy improvements. Any electrical upgrades that are required to, like the service entry upgrade that might be required to add a heat pump, you could include the cost of that in the loan. Also, we're funding climate adaptation measures, so things like backflow prevention valves or sump pumps, permeable pavement, maybe tile drainage. As you're insulating your basement, you maybe want to add French drains around the house, for example. And up to 30% of the loan value can be used for related costs or other renovations that you might like to do at the same time, including secondary suites. So adding a rental unit or a granny suite, those are all eligible. That's eligible up to 30% of the loan value. And we'd like to focus on secondary suites in this program because they're such a necessary part of our GHG reductions as well through intensification. So the application process, it's all on the Better Homes Ottawa website, betterhomes.ottawa.ca. But what you would essentially do is start with an EnerGuide audit. Those have a bit of a long lead time right now. So you want to get that request in first. Once that audit is scheduled, you can start with your application as well, your Better Homes Ottawa Loan Program application. Now, we don't really care which order you do those two steps in. However, we do recommend doing the EnerGuide audit first, because we have a 12-month clock on the application from when you submit your application to when you request your final loan. We're giving folks 12 months to do that. So you want to get your audit done first and move things along so that you can complete the work in that 12-month window. We then issue your notice to proceed if you meet the credit check requirements. You can then you're getting quotes from contractors, and once you've got your list of measures that you'd like to implement, you submit what's called the funding request form. At that point, the city will, if requested by the homeowner, the city will advance 30% of the funds to the homeowner so that to cover any security deposits that you make to contractors, just so people aren't out of pocket. So we're trying to make this cash flow neutral. Once the work is completed, then the homeowner signs the property owner agreement, does the EnerGuide follow-up audit, and submits a project completion report with all of the invoices attached. And then the city will provide the balance of the loan and put the lien on the property. So then the homeowner uses that money to pay the contractors their balance of invoices, and then the homeowner will pay the loan over time via their property tax bill. Also, as part of the program, we're offering certifications to contractors to try to increase the quality and quantity of contractors who know about deep energy retrofits. So fairly soon, we'll be announcing a schedule for free service or free courses for contractors in advanced building science, net zero builder training, and net zero renovation training. We're also doing some work with HRAI to offer some courses on heat pumps for existing HVAC contractors. So how to market and sell heat pumps and some ground source heat pump information in particular. Okay, so this is the information where you can reach us at the city. I would suggest that if you're interested in this program, the betterhomesottawa.ca website that Mel sent around is really the place to go. However, if you want to know more about the city's climate change initiatives in other regards, you can sign up for our newsletter. at this website, ottawa.ca/energy evolution, or the link is also at the end of that survey that I sent in the chat. And if you'd like to reach myself or my colleague Emma, you can reach us here at betterhomes@ottawa.ca or that phone number. Okay.
Fantastic, Janice. No, it's great to have this program live and running. Congrats on getting it all through the motion. It's not an easy thing, and you know, invite everyone to sign up for the newsletter as well, as that's a great resource as well. The question from mortgage provider: does this Ottawa loan go in a second position relative to the mortgage?
It doesn't actually. The municipality's position is primary on the property tax bill, so it's following the same process that the municipal tax arrears would follow, which is in a lien position on the property.
And is it too late to apply for those who've already started their renovation upgrade process?
So any projects that are, any work that's done between the EnerGuide audit and the post-EnerGuide audit, and that is not, where the invoices are dated after the date of the application to the Better Homes Loan Program, are eligible.
Okay, great. To get the grant, do you need to convert all natural gas appliances to electricity, or can you still keep natural gas fireplace and laundry and water heater?
Yeah, we're not requiring that folks replace any existing appliances. We're just financing things that are energy improvements to the home. I should also be clear, these are energy improvements that are tied to the home. So appliances are actually not eligible under this program because they can be removed from the home. So because the property, the security for the loan is a lien on the property, it has to be for things that are attached to the property.
Well, that's a good point. Do you have to have specific renovations planned out before you apply?
No, but like I said, the timeline is 12 months from application to completion. And so if you know, the more work you've done ahead of time, the more likely you are to be able to do all those measures within that time frame. Yeah, I guess that's the short answer. If you need an extension at 12 months, we will review cases that are requesting that, but we can't guarantee that the funding will still be available at that point, because we do, you know, we'll lock that funding in for you for that 12-month period. But if there's others that come in, you know, throughout, then we'll have to, at some point we'll run out of funds, right?
Sure, makes sense. It's nice to see people driving towards this and some demand there. Is the lien against the house? And what if we already have a HELOC that is full, HELOC?
I have to confirm what that exactly means. So yeah, the lien is against the property. So on the property tax bill, you're not eligible for the program if you're under the mortgage deferral program or the tax deferral program. Those were both available from the city and from CMHC as part of COVID response. Mel, do you have anything to add to that?
Other than I've just been clarified that it's a home equity line of credit.
Great. Yes, of course. If you have a home equity line of credit, you can use that for financing. If you prefer to use the 0% interest money from the city, that's available to you as well. So you can use both. You can leverage both financing mechanisms.
Perhaps I'll ask the question a different way, Janice, to get the same answer. What happens if your mortgage amount is higher than your MPAC valuation amount? How does the city deal with that?
That's a good question. So what we've said is
most people's will be, right? It's very common.
If the property has, I'll have to check back again on the definitions here, but I believe what we've said is if the property has less, it is insured by CMHC. So if it's under the less than 20% payment towards the mortgage, then the limitation for, or the maximum financing that we would offer would be 5% of property value. So essentially the minimum that CMHC's minimum is 5% down. And we're saying if you're not, you know, if you're in that threshold of 5% down, then the maximum we'll lend is the 5%, right? Is 5% of property value. Did that answer the question?
I think so. We've got quite a few to roll through, so we'll hope. And I know there's an FAQ section there that people can check out too. Someone's wondering, are heat pump dryers eligible?
So no, because they're not tied to the property.
Right, you did mention that. And what about metal roofs?
Interesting. So if you're redoing the roof, the insulation part of that roof replacement would be eligible, but a metal roof itself is not an energy efficiency upgrade, so I don't think that would be eligible. It could be perhaps part of the 30% additional if you're doing roof work at the same time, you know, insulation or solar panels or something.
Is there a gap between the time work is done and all the paperwork is done to receive the remainder of the loan amount?
Yes, so by the time the work is done, you have to have the follow-up energy audit before you can submit your project completion report. So how long so that's the main time lag, would be how long it takes you to book your follow-up energy audit. You could try to book those in advance if you know when your work is to be completed. And then it's just paperwork that you would submit to the city. So your final completion report is just, you know, basically all the measures you completed, a copy of your EnerGuide audit, and your invoices that are associated with that work. And once the city receives that, then the city will will release the funds for the loan.
That's great. Someone's wondering, any findings from the Toronto loan program that are sort of informing this?
Yeah, we've modeled a lot of this after the Toronto program, to be honest. They were quite generous in sharing a lot of their documentation. So we've borrowed a lot of their legal contracts and their approach. Yeah, lots of, and as Mel said, the website is also heavily borrowed from Toronto and amended for the City of Ottawa. So yeah, it does replicate the Toronto model to a large degree. We have made some key amendments that are going to make it easier to sell, we think, in Ottawa. And of course, the 0% financing is unique to Ottawa. It doesn't, they don't offer that in Toronto right now.
Someone's wondering, can they get funding under the loan for materials they use when they do the work themselves? They anticipate contractors being used for some tax, but in another case, they want to do the work themselves.
Yep, so anything that has a receipt or an invoice associated is eligible. So if you're buying insulation and installing it yourself, that's fine. You can submit your receipts for that material, yeah.
Great. If we go for a heat pump with gas furnace backup integrated system, could the loan help pay for the heat pump portion?
Yes, it could, yeah. The heat pump is eligible. So NRCan's list of heat pumps that Matthew referenced, and I think there was a link in the chat way at the beginning, is the list of eligible heat pumps as well for the program, for this loan program. And you can certainly incorporate that into your loan eligibility amount.
Great.
Just a little caution on that one. The NRCan eligible heat pumps do not include natural gas furnaces in that. So I would say, no, you cannot use the heat pump with a natural gas furnace in general.
Well, I think, Dan, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I understood that NRCan's grant was towards a cold climate heat pump, that the backup could be natural gas, but the grant is not covering the natural gas amount, and it has to be using the same air handling unit, right? So that's what we talked about earlier with the air handling unit having to be working as a system.
Yeah, so the problem is in all the central air systems, they have an integrated electric backup heat with them, the eligible ones. The split, it's a little unclear on the split whether you could do that scenario with a split. But as we mentioned before, and as Matthew had mentioned before, you do have to put in enough air source heat pump to do the entire house. So I don't know, there's maybe a small workaround on that. I'm just not sure that it's 100% economical to do the small workaround. So
can I just jump in and say that I sit on a service organization call with NRCan every 2 weeks, and it's clear as mud from NRCan what the requirements for air source heat pumps are. And there's a lot of back end conversations going on. So I would encourage you to stay tuned for clarification on grant stuff, and we'll make sure that our energy coach can answer those questions. I'm just letting you know that I literally listen to an hour-long conversation bi-weekly about eligibility of air source heat pumps and what NRCan deems, and lots of comments from energy advisors. So just throwing it out there.
So Melanie, I don't know if it's by accident or deliberately, but credit to them, at the moment, they seem to have ruled out a natural gas backup. And I think it would be great.
Certainly, I was very excited to see that there
were
no.
That'd be fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the risk is they've done it by accident.
Yeah. So I will play the devil's advocate here. I mean, for me, getting everybody off fossil fuels and onto electricity is the ultimate dream goal. However, if you just bought a furnace last year, you know, that's not the environmentally sound thing to do, to just ditch your furnace either. So, you know, we want to help folks get as far as we can get them to net zero, to deep retrofit. So, yeah, I fully support us just getting off and stop burning things. I'd hashtag love it. However, you know, if you just put your furnace in and you still want to move towards utilizing a heat pump for the majority of your heating and cooling, that's a really good first step.
But we should remember that that's a financial thing. The embedded carbon in a furnace is tiny compared with the amount of gas it uses in a year. So getting rid of a one-year-old furnace for the environment is absolutely the right thing to do. It's a lot of money. You're blowing $6,000 out the window, but you're not blowing any GHGs out the window by doing that. It's literally, it's always going to be better to replace it right now. It's the same with an EV. Even if you've got a one-year-old car, replace it with an EV, you're still better off. It works. It's just, we shouldn't confuse money and GHGs. They're often opposite.
Well, some great discussions, everybody. Sorry for those folks that we couldn't get through to all the questions in chat. I know there were quite a few. It's basically, you know, a novel at this point, but we will save it and get it out to everybody on the Eventbrite list. So no worries there for those on mobile who can't save it. Thanks so much, Janice. It's really exciting to have this loan program. Really appreciate you kind of going over that with us, and you know, invite everyone to input their questions via email there to the address that Janice shared. Why don't we go around for some final thoughts? We'll start with Mel, we'll go over to Matthew, and then we'll finish with Daniel for some final thoughts.
Final thoughts. Thanks very much for having us, Nick. Super informative. Really glad to see the level of interest in heat pump technology, and you know, special thanks to the technical side of things. I'm going to plug the loan until the cows come home. It's a really great program. Not really sure that, you know, we've already seen a great amount of uptake, and we're really looking forward to rolling it out. And again, you know, get that energy audit. I did see a few comments in the chat. Just a quick response. We are currently, yes, booking out fairly far into April, essentially. However, we are earmarking some sort of spots for folks that are, you know, maybe already have contractors booked and that kind of thing. So we will be able to accommodate some last minute appointments in a lot of cases. Thanks again, Nick.
Oh, no, thank you. That's great to hear, you know, so much demand, and thanks so much for your time and effort on that. Matthew, some final comments.
Well, I think I'm going to issue a meta comment, and I think it's Janice and I and a few of the other people on this call were involved in the early days of this when it was first mooted. And I'm amazed that we can have this webinar around this loan program at this point. It's an amazing achievement for Janice and her team and the rest of the people at the city and people like Mike and the rest of the group in that group. It's an incredible achievement, and I think that should be congratulated. This really is going to help us stop burning stuff, and thank you to the city and to Environment Centre for organizing this. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks so much, Matthew. Daniel, some final comments.
Matt just took the words directly out of my mouth. It is an amazing achievement that Janice and the city have done, and that Mel and Enviro Center have done. It really, really is fantastic. I will, put one last plug in for you know, myself. I wouldn't be in this business doing consulting on the costing side of things if I didn't think that it was a valuable service. So if, you know, you folks are confused about exactly what the costs might be, what your savings might be, what your reduction in greenhouse gas, and what the clear path for you personally to do, we offer that service for a small fee at the Building Science Trust.
Fabulous. Janice, did you want to jump in for a couple of final comments?
Yeah, just two things. So I put the link in this for the survey. Fill it out if you can. Let us know your feedback on how we can better help you, implement heat pumps. Maybe two things actually in addition. One is we're really glad to have the program launched. We'd love it to sell out very quickly. I would love to go back to council and say, oh my gosh, we thought 3 years of funding. We thought it would last for 3 years. It's gone in 1. We need more money, right? So that would be an excellent scenario. I would love for you all to take us and take all of our money very quickly. And lastly, I would just also emphasize that yes, heat pumps are a big part of the solution, but so is thermal energy reduction. So really do couple that with insulation and air sealing. I didn't mention this before, but air sealing is actually a requirement as part of our program. If you have air exchanges of less than of more than 3 air exchanges per hour, we are going to require that you improve that through things like cheap things like air sealing, weather stripping, and caulking. You can do it yourself on a Sunday, but that's a requirement for the program as well, because we don't want to be putting good heat out the window.
Yeah, no, great point.
Janice, are you offering to come over and do it on a Sunday or not?
There you go.
We've got a great video of me doing some caulking on my windows and showing you how to do it.
And I know you've also got that thermal program through the library.
The libraries, yeah, thanks. Yeah, in a couple of weeks, there'll be thermal cameras in every one of the libraries across the city. So you can borrow one of those, and I recommend taking pictures at night. In the winter, it's perfect now that there's difference in temperature enough, so you can do your own sort of energy audits with your thermal camera and get a sense of where the heat is coming out of your house, where the insulation might be lacking. So those are really good tools as well.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much, everybody. It's been great to continue our home retrofit webinar series here at SmartNet Alliance, partnered with the City of Ottawa. Stay tuned for more episodes. We'll be back in the winter and then another one in the spring. Want to invite you to join us for our next virtual Green Drinks too. We keep the renewable learning going. We're going to be talking electric vehicles on December 9th. So just scroll up through and chat and you can register for that one. It should be another great session. Thanks so much, everybody, for the activity and chat. Another special mention to Chris Habits for all his hard work there. Thanks to all the presenters. Thanks to everybody for coming out and being passionate about being the first to do these deep energy retrofits. We here at SmartNet Alliance really want to foster that evolution and acceleration towards Canada's sustainable economy. So once again, thanks everybody. We'll send out a recording, we'll capture the chat, and we'll be back for more of these webinars. So once again, Nick here at SmartNet Alliance, and we'll hope to see you again soon. Good night, everybody.